Let me spend much of my time on talking about an issue that's very important not only to this area but to the city, and that's dealing with the flooding issue, which is critically important. With what happened 2 weeks ago, I think it points out the significance. But let me also say, all of us as mayoral candidates, I know it's an important issue. There is only one that really has truly experienced the flooding and been directly affected by it, and that's Chris Bell. And so I certainly want to extend my best to Chris and his family because he's living in it. The rest of us are talking about it. But flooding is important. I had the opportunity to kind of tour the Meyerland area, go to the Family Service Center and talk to Linda Burgess and her entire staff that pointed out the importance of it. Then went down and went over to the UOS, to the synagogue, talked with the rabbi, even walked over to his home, because people are facing this in real time. Now, we certainly need to place a great deal of emphasis on drainage and flooding in a real sense. You just can't get away with it. Now, we're not going to be completely able to eliminate flooding as a whole, but we need to make sure that we put the proper attention and the resources in dealing with drainage from the city's perspective, in dealing with flooding. I know the Bryce Bayou projects have been delayed till 2021. We need to utilize all of our resources and working with the city, working with the feds to try to speed that up. At the same time, as people go about trying to dry out and repair their homes, I think they also want to have the assurance that they won't have to face this down the road. Another thing that I think we need to consider is to try to secure as much federal dollars as possible so we can help to raise people's homes. Now, I think in the New Jersey area, for example, I think they may have gotten something like $325 million or more to help raise folk homes. And so what we are needing to do, in addition to trying to speed up the Bryce Bayou project, in addition to drainage, and that is to try to work in collaboration with congressional leaders and others to draw down as much federal dollars so that people can help to assist. Now, FEMA will pay in part to rebuild your home. They're not going to pay you a dime to raise your home. But if we can draw down federal dollars, then I think that will give people the added satisfaction that they can rebuild in their community, they can stay in their community, and we can reduce the possibility of them flooding in the future. That's going to require collaboration on all levels. I'm certainly talking with the governor's office, on the appropriation end, I'm vice chair of appropriation, talking with our congressional leaders to see if we can do that in real time. And so I think that's critically important. So infrastructure, anybody who wants to be the next CEO, you have to pay a great deal of attention to infrastructure. In addition to that, I think it's also important to make sure that the city is managed financially well. 2016, 17, and 18 will be some tough, challenging years financially. The debt service will spike in 2018. Of my 26 years in the legislature, 21 of my 26 years have been spent on the Appropriations Committee. I am vice chair of the Appropriations Committee, been vice chair since 2011. Quite frankly, I've been the only Democrat since 2003 that has served on the conference committee managing the state's budget. In 2003, when we faced a $10 billion shortfall, I was at the table. In 2011, when we faced a $27 billion shortfall, I was at the table. So financial management is critically important. Public safety is critically important. Right now, we have fewer police officers than we had 10 years ago. And quite frankly, 1,900 of our approximately 5,200 police officers can retire right now. They can just walk, they say, hey, done, and get their retirement. 1,400 of about 4,000 firefighters can retire right now. So public safety, working with men and women on the police force, fire department, and municipal groups are critically important to maintaining this city and moving it forward, while at the same time working to balance our books, because you have to do that and you have to work in collaboration. And then something that we don't talk about as much, but we need to talk about even more, and that's income inequality within this city. There's a lot of growth and development, and that's good, and we want to keep that going. But 24% of the people in this city are what I call the working poor. They're working every day, but they can't afford the insurance, they can't afford affordable homes, and if we want people to live in the city, to have affordable homes, to be able to pay the mortgage, then we have to make sure that we raise the ladder for everyone and not just a few. I am a lifelong Houstonian. I've been blessed by being in the city of Houston. The city has been good to me. This is the last political office I shall see. I think I've done a pretty decent job in Austin. I'm hoping after I fill out this application and go through these extensive interviews, I hope at the end of the day that you will decide to choose me and hire me as your next mayor. I'm Sylvester Turner, and I'm asking for the right to serve. Thank you.
Any questions for Representative?
Well, I thank you. Well, let me just say this if there's no more questions. Look at my record of, yes ma'am.
Arts, how do you feel about the art scene?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. I'm a big proponent of the arts. In this legislative session, number one, we have 5 local art districts in this city. They have not been funded at all, 5. In this budget, there's $10 million that I was able to set aside for our local arts districts. There's money in this budget for some of our parks to join with the city of Houston in what they are doing. When you look at the arts, we have the Miller Outdoor Theater, which is the #1 professionally outdoor theater in the country. We have the 2nd most theater seats, only behind New York, right here in the city of Houston. If you want to enhance people's quality of life, you cannot ignore the arts, and we have to be doing everything that we can to continue to support the arts. And it's not just something on a wall. Arts is an economic engine, creates jobs, and I mean good paying jobs. And we need to pay as much attention to our local artists as well as we place emphasis on artists that are coming from throughout the globe. So I'm a strong proponent, and I will be honored to champion the arts if you give me the opportunity to serve as your mayor. Yes, sir.
So you were a champion, and I appreciate it, of blocking the bill that was going to eliminate dues deductions from payroll and pensions for public employees. And how are you going to carry that kind of position forward as mayor of the city vis-a-vis HOPE and the other public employee associations?
I didn't quite understand the last part.
Okay, so you're a proponent of the dues deduction.
Yes, I fought against
public employees. And so how are you going to carry that through in the position as mayor?
And I think what he's referring to is that you have the voluntary dues checkoff for your labor groups. There was an attempt in Austin to eliminate employees from voluntarily providing their dues to the unions. In essence, it was an attempt to wipe out unions. I fought against it, and that bill did not pass. And I'm glad that it did not pass. I think it's critically important to recognize you will see many of us who are seeking to be mayor, but the people who run this city, the people who are out there picking up the debris in the Maryland area and across the street of the city, the people who are out there making sure that the city runs every day, the men and women who are out there putting out the fires, who are answering these calls, these people represent your labor force. And we have some excellent city employees. I think what everybody wants is to be appreciated and respected. And if we appreciate and respect people, then people will come to the table and they will help us to move forward in a very positive way in the city of Houston. I look forward to working with the city employees, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Again, Sylvester Turner, I just hope when we looked at everything and heard all the interviews, that you would say, he may not be the best looking guy, but he'll be a damn good mayor.
All right, thank you, Representative. Next up is Chris Bell. Chris, come on up for your time.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back with the Meyerland Democrats. Back in 2012, Allison and I had the honor of hosting the 10th anniversary of the Meyerland Democrats in our home down the street, and it's good that we had it back in 2012, because unless we were doing a Pioneer Days theme, we wouldn't be hosting anything there now. And so we're definitely going to talk about flooding this evening, because it's something we've experienced. But I wanted to talk about that anniversary for just a moment, because at the event, a founding member of the organization pointed out to me that back in 2002, when the organization was getting off the ground, who the first speaker was. and it was me, and I was running for Congress. And it's phenomenal to watch how this group has grown and prospered over the years. And so my congratulations to the Meyerland Democrats, and of course, today is a historic evening because we're joined by more Republicans than we've ever had at Meyerland. As you know, I just couldn't resist. I'm sorry. And I'm sure you'll be doing the same to me at Pachyderm meetings. But I did have the privilege of representing this area as a member of Congress. I had the privilege of representing the area as an at-large member of the Houston City Council, and decided to get back in the public arena this year because I believe that the city of Houston is perfectly positioned to move to what I call the next level, and to not only be the fourth largest city, but to actually start acting like the fourth largest city and to become one of the most modern cities in the entire country. Cities that are moving forward at the fastest pace in this day and age are fully embracing the advancements in technology. Cities like New York and Chicago and Boston are the ones you hear routinely mentioned. Well, I want the city of Houston mentioned right along with it, because when you fully embrace technology, you empower neighborhoods and communities like never before. You allow for problem-solving ability like never before. And to become the most modern city, I think it's imperative that we start embracing those advancements in technology. But it's not all about computers. It's also about looking at how we can do more with what we already have, how we can repurpose some of our assets. And one of the ideas that I've put on the table that I'm very proud of has to do with the city's library system. I've always been a huge proponent of our library system, but obviously its traditional role of providing access to books and periodicals has been somewhat diminished in recent years because of the advancements in technology. Well, how can our library system remain relevant? How can it continue to be a valuable asset for the city of Houston? Well, my idea is to look at the underutilized space in our library system and transition and renovate that space into pre-K classrooms. There's almost universal agreement among Republicans and Democrats that access to pre-K is one of the greatest insurance policies ensuring future success in school. I believe the city needs to get in this game, and we're in a position to partner with educators and school districts and provide space. I believe we need to be doing that. I think that's what modern cities do. Look at what you have and how can you do more with what you have. This club was founded to uphold and to talk about democratic principles. And there's an old saying that there's no such thing as a Republican or Democratic pothole, and I completely agree with that, and both the Republican, Democratic, and Independent potholes all need to be filled. And so we are going to have to address our infrastructure, and that's something else modern cities do. I have 1 minute left, so I want to go back for just a moment to what I talked about in the beginning, that congressional race. I announced for that congressional race right down the street on the banks of Ray's Bayou because it was late 2001, we had experienced Tropical Storm Allison, and it needed to be the #1 priority. And when I went to Congress, it was working with other members of the delegation. We brought home over $50 million for flood and drainage projects. Somewhere along the line, it fell off the priority screen. That should have never been allowed to happen. I assure you, after enduring what we've endured in the last couple of weeks and watching 3 feet of water come into my home and memories and mementos being drowned, it will always be a priority. We will fight for that funding, and we will also never let it fall off the priority screen. I want to be your next mayor. I want to modernize this city, and I ask for your support.
I don't have a question yet. I was asking.
She wants to ask about the arts funding. Absolutely. And it was a battle that I fought as a member of Houston City Council. You might recall that an arbitrary cap had been put in place to keep the various arts organizations from getting their full percentage of the hot tax funding. That should have never happened. I supported doing away with the cap back then. Do not want to see any caps put in place. That tax should be generating, the percentage should be generating somewhere around $100 million for the various arts organizations, and I think that can be administered and fairly divided, and I'm certainly very supportive of that and have always been supportive of the arts here in Houston. Yes, sir.
You mentioned partnering with the schools. Are you referring to charter schools as well?
If they have programs that they want to come forward, I think it's going to have to be worked out along the line. What the city would primarily be providing was access to space, and as far as what the criteria is going to be as to who's going to provide the programs, I just want to fill that gap because there are gaps out there, and that's why we don't have universal access. And I think it's a perfect way to not only provide greater access to pre-K, but as one person very involved in early childhood education also pointed out, it's a great way to get parents to be coming into the library, hopefully picking up books that they'll be taking home and reading to their kids, another major challenge. In the back.
Would you support a sales tax increase to fund universal pre-K?
No, I don't think that there's the political will for any tax increases right now, and I think we're going to have to find ways to live within our means the best way possible, and we certainly need to get our arms around the financial challenges that we face, but other cities have faced greater financial challenges that we face, and they've dealt with them, and I believe that we'll deal with ours as well, and she's saying, please stop. And I know so many people say that silently in their heads when I'm speaking, and she just held up a card. Anyway, thank you all so
Thank
much.
you, Chris Bell. Next up is Marty McVeigh.
Hi, I'm Marty McVeigh, and I'm a Democrat running for mayor of the city of Houston. I'm glad to be back here again. This is my second time at Meyerland Democrats, so I'm very glad to be here. It's always hard to follow up my friend Chris Bell. He's the funniest guy in this race. So I will correct my other friend, Sylvester Turney, said that Chris Bell was the only candidate in the race that had any experience with flooding, and I'll correct that. In 2011, I was appointed by President Barack Obama to the board of the United States Agency for International Development, and in that role, I played a leadership role within the agency, and I responded to floods and earthquakes and other natural and man-made disasters around the world. So it is a very complicated issue, but I have responded in kind to my country when needed. So I'm a businessman. I'm a business leader. I believe in economic development. I believe that we need to have real economic development here in the... Oh, you're not hearing me? Can I start over? I believe that we need real economic development here in the city of Houston. The city of Houston does not currently take an active role in recruiting businesses from around the world to relocate here to increase revenue to the city. The problems that we have with potholes and pensions, it comes back to the city not having enough resources to pay for these. Whether they be good or bad deals, the city just doesn't have the funds. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in budget deficit every year. We have billions of dollars in unfunded liabilities for the city of Houston. So what do? When you have a problem in Texas, you have a problem with getting out of a hole, you just stop digging first. That's the first step. We need to get control of our financial situation. We need to balance the budget. We need to look at what's important to us. The next mayor will have many, many challenges, and one of those is the infrastructure. We don't really know what the outcome will be from the Supreme Court's ruling on last Friday for Rebuild Houston. We don't know, but we're looking at that and studying how we're going to deal with that. It's just another challenge that the next mayor will have to deal with. So we have to worry about the budget. We've got to worry about infrastructure. We've got to worry about our policing and many, many issues that face the city. We've got a lot of challenges ahead, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world. The sky is not falling. All of these things can be solved with good management, good leadership, and a vision for the city of Houston. We need to have a whole of government approach that we currently do not have. And we need to look to the future. It's not just about the next 6 months or the next 6 years. It's about the next 60 years. We need to invest in Houston. So with that, I'll take some questions. Do I get more time now? Questions? Yes, ma'am. The arts. I certainly support no caps on arts in the city of Houston. I want to take it to the maximum allowed by law, which is over 19%. So I think that the city should embrace that and make that policy. So more about the arts. This is something that I can sell as mayor. We've got to be able to attract businesses around the world and people, talent from around the world. And the arts is one of the ways that we do that. So it's very important to me. Yes. Yes, ma'am. I've heard.
I know you talk in big terms, but what exactly would you do?
Well, the question that she asked was potholes, and it's a big issue, and I certainly know that. We all know that the city's infrastructure is crumbling, and the life expectancy of any road is really between 30 to 40 years, and we're about 85% of that is past its life. So we have to invest, and one of the ways that we have to get the resources to do that is to get our money from the federal government. The city does get some money from the federal government, but it's not enough. My friend Chris Bell just mentioned that. I agree with that. What's happened before, I don't know, but we got to go after and get more money. It belongs to us. So every grant that's available to us, we're going to go after from the state, from the federal government, and that's why we need a real Office of Economic Development in the city of Houston that is led and reports directly to the mayor. This is the lifeblood of the city. We cannot farm this out. We cannot wait any longer. We must invest in us. Thank you. Do I have time for another question? Yes, sir.
So the same question about unions, how would you relate to the unions that are in the city, both at the police and fire and also with Hope, the city workers, in terms of their pensions and supporting their right to have dues deduction from their paychecks?
Well, I support the right to have deductions from their paychecks. The first part about how it relates, I didn't get the first part, sir.
Well, I was just giving the background about where I was going to go with that. Which is
Okay.
what
All right.
the relationship
Well,
would be with those.
As far as the pensions go, I mean, a deal's a deal. We need to meet our obligations. I think the best way to handle that is to bond our way out of it and to negotiate in the future. I don't want to negotiate in the past. A deal's a deal, and we need to meet those obligations. Thank you. Do I still have any more time? I got a few seconds left. Any more questions? Ben Hall has a question. Oh, go ahead. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate being out here today. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you there. Mr. King, where are you, Bill King? There he is. He's going to come up.
Good evening, my name is Bill King. Glad to be back with y'all again. I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago talking about mobility from some of the columns I've written. I grew up down in Galveston County, working class family. My dad was a pipe fitter. I worked my way through the University of Houston, went to law school at night, and got to start my career in this amazing city with all the opportunities it has. And I appreciate that, and I cherish the city for that reason. But I'm concerned today about the direction of our city in several important respects. The first is our infrastructure. I mean, all you need is go down here, drive on one of these streets a few blocks, and know how bad our infrastructure is, and for you folks in particular, the drainage issues that we're facing. And frankly, those are just the tip of the iceberg. We also have some very serious problems with our wastewater treatment system, which you're going to be hearing more about later this year. Secondly, what I find is Houstonians don't feel safe anymore in the city. And it's hardly surprising we've been dubbed the robbery capital of America. There's a burglary every 15 minutes in the city. And we have a police department that candidly admits that they don't even investigate the vast majority of crimes reported to them. And so as a result, you may be shocked to know that the police department only solved 8% of the burglaries that were reported to them last year, and only 20% of the robberies that were reported to them, well below the national averages. Now, the police department will tell you that the reason for that is they don't have enough resources. And it's probably true, we don't have enough police officers on the force. But here's the problem I have. The police department's budget has doubled in the last 10 years from $450 million to $900 million, yet we have 300 fewer police officers than we had on staff 10 years ago. We've gone from 175 officers on the command staff to 325 officers on the command staff in the last 6 years. So while we definitely need some more officers on the street before we start throwing more money at the police department, I want to look at how that money's being spent and whether all of it really needs to be spent. And I'll give you one example. I cannot imagine for the life of me why the city of Houston is still in the crime lab business. I think we've pretty well demonstrated that's not one of our core competencies. Harris County has a brand new crime lab run by a medical doctor in the medical center, accredited by every accrediting agency there is, dying to have our business. And what do? We go off and set up a new local government corporation that has an executive director, a chief financial officer, a general counsel, a PR person. Why are we spending all that money? These are the kind of things that we need to look at. But the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about in our finances is that we haven't balanced the budget now in about 15 years. We have deficits in the general fund projected at $150 million a year as far as the eye can see. We have $20 billion in a combination of bonds and pension debt, which, by the way, is more money than Detroit owed when it filed bankruptcy a couple of years ago. This is an unsustainable financial model we're on. And this is not a revenue problem. The water and sewer rates are up 42% in the last 5 years. We instituted the drainage fee, which was in essence the largest property tax increase we ever passed in the city. Property taxes themselves have gone up every year. Last year we collected $132 million more in property taxes than we did the year before, and yet we still can't balance our budget and pay our bills. It's time we've got to get the city back to the basics. We've got to start looking at those core services, like the infrastructure, like public safety, and we've got to do it on a balanced budget. Now, with respect to the drainage issue, which I know all of you have a big interest in here, this is a perfect example of taking our eye off the ball. As Chris said, the project Braze was supposed to be finished in 2014. It's now been delayed to 2021 or 2022. And what have we been doing about that? The mayor of Houston needs to be in D.C. every year, beating on the table, insisting that that project be funded. I'll tell you what I'm worried about. I mean, I'd love to get it accelerated. What I'm worried about is it not being finished in 2022 now. And that's something we absolutely have to stay on top of and pay attention to. You look at all these problems and they seem a little daunting, but frankly, this is what Houstonians do. We solve these kind of problems. We do the incredible things like digging a ship channel 50 miles inland, or putting men on the moon, or taking a heart out of one person and putting it in another one, and building the biggest medical center. We've got this. We just have to reprioritize where we're spending our money, make sure we right-size our expenditures to our revenues, and we can get the city back to basics. We can fix the streets, catch the crooks, and balance the budget, and that's why I'm running for mayor. Yes, ma'am. I'm in favor of that. You know, we go to all these forums, and most of them have some particular group that's having, so you spend all your time agreeing with the audience. But I guess the real issue, just last year, City Council and the mayor passed a cap on the arts, and they've moved a certain it's kind of increment financing, and so anything over that increment is now moved into the general fund, and I'm not in favor of that. I think we ought to go away with that. And that was just instituted last year. Yes, sir.
Do you favor there being dues deduction for public employee unions and other unions?
If it's voluntary, I'm okay with it. Is that it? All right, thank you all for coming.
All right, Mr. Ben Hall.
I just want you to know that's my big family that came along with me. I want to start by addressing the questions you've already asked. I support the arts. In fact, I'd be favorably inclined to consider an increase in the appropriations out of the hot tax. Dues, let me address that question. If it's voluntary, I support it. Potholes, very important issue. Most of us want to talk about what we want to talk about, but this is very important. I would change the way that we address potholes. There's a new technology that's cheaper for the taxpayers that we can implement. It's liquid asphalt. We all know when we see asphalt, they pull it off of the truck, they pack it in a hole, and what's going to happen in 3 months? We got a hole in the same place. Liquid asphalt is more permanent, and I support the adoption of that new technology. It will save us a lot of money. Let me talk about flooding. I come with a heavy heart tonight because a few evenings ago, 9 of our neighbors died. They died because they drove into flooded waterways. That ought not be the case in a city as great as ours. As your mayor, we will implement flood lights at each of our heavy flood areas. Just imagine, people are driving into these areas because they think the water is shallow. Just a simple device that turns on when the water gets to a certain elevation to warn, this is too deep, can save lives. I would support that as a new measure. Number 2, with regard to repairing our streets and our roads, we can do better than simply open cut, which is cutting the asphalt and then filling it back in. We actually have micro-technology techniques right now that's cheaper for the taxpayers, a third cheaper than we're paying right now. Just imagine if we could save up about $263 million of road repairs, 30% savings. As your mayor, I'll do so. Just recently, Stephen Costello knows this as well as all of the other mayoral candidates. The Texas Supreme Court last Thursday effectively struck down Houston's drainage fee. I've always opposed it. I opposed it when it was first conceived. I opposed it when it was passed. I still oppose it today. It's wrongful policy for the city of Houston to continue to tax its residents and not give them an effective drainage system. So I want to tell you, as your mayor, I will not support a drainage fee or a rain tax to be imposed on citizens. So you might ask the question, well, how are you going to handle drainage? How are you going to attack the issue of flooding in this city? How many of you know how the drainage fee is presently being spent? What do you think it's spent on? Do you think it's spent on roads? Do you think it's spent on repairing potholes? How many of you believe that it's being spent on salaries? It is. How many of you believe that it's being spent on bonuses? It is. How many of you think that it diverted some of the money that paid our city attorney $350,000 for his salary? I used to be the city attorney here. I didn't make nearly that kind of money. When we passed the drainage tax, we never thought that it would be used for hike and bike trails. It's wrongful policy, and it was wrongfully sold to the voters. So, as your mayor, I intend to maximize savings off new technologies in terms of handling drainage. Let me tell you about policing. I'm in favor of body cameras on our police officers. It's good for police officers and it's good for the public. I'm also in favor of a citizens review board not with prosecutorial power, but with subpoena power. Because I believe we are the bosses, the taxpayers, and that the police officers should serve and protect. That's the kind of mayor I intend to be. Let's talk about traffic. As Councilmember Bradford has so often complained and focused on at council, and I applaud you, Councilmember Bradford, how are we going to address traffic issues? The other day I was talking to TxDOT's regional director, and his philosophy or his approach was to continue to channel traffic into congested areas. That's wrong. Right now, more of the $11 billion that will be allocated in transportation needs will come on the west side of town. What about the north side? What about the east side, and what about the southeast side? Just imagine if we could redirect traffic away from the west side to new commercial centers on the west, north, and east side. On the north, east, and southeast side, we can redirect traffic away from these congested areas. As your mayor, I would advocate such a traffic plan. Education. The last time I ran for mayor, some of you may recall, I did run for mayor a couple of years ago. I'm sorry, I gotta please stop here. Ask the question about education I'll answer. Oh, my wife just asked it. Okay, thank you, baby. Your questions, please. Yes.
You were starting a new topic. Go ahead and address that.
I love you. Thank you so much. Education. In order to have a first-class city, you must have first-class education. We have gotten away from believing that because we have an independent school district, that the city government has no role in educating our kids. It does. As your mayor, I pledge that I will commit to work with the independent school district and those officials to make sure it's a priority in the mayor's office to educate our children. Yes,
Do you
yes,
see
ma'am.
any other monies coming for early childhood education? That's always been a real struggle. I am a 4th grade teacher, and I still have kids that can barely read at their grade level. We have 6th graders reading in 1st grade level, and early childhood keeps getting cut and cut and cut. Funds cut all over the place. What can we do about it?
I am a strong advocate for education, preschool education, as well as after-school education for our children. Both of my parents were educators. My mother taught for 60 years and my father 58 years in public school. Sandra, my wife, her parent was both a principal in a high school as well as a special needs educator for 20 plus years. As your mayor, I will be the education mayor. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, before we move on real quick, as president of Meyerland Democrats, 1 year ago, last May, we passed a resolution on HERO in support of HERO. I know Chris Beld, I know Sister.
And if you want to know why, I'll explain. But I do not support HERO as it's presently written. You want me to address it?
Just a yes or no.
No, it's fine. I was just trying to make sure, as president, we just make sure.
I support HERO.
Yeah, right there. All right. Next.
Bill King.
Yes. Bill King. Yes. On the HERO question.
I would not have put HERO on the agenda if I had been mayor. I think it's done more harm than good. I think it's divided the city in a way that we weren't divided before. It would not have been the highest priority I would have had.
Okay. Mr. King was saying that he's not in support of HERO. Is that correct?
No, that's not what I said. Is that what he said? I said it would not have been a priority. I would not have put it on the agenda if I had been mayor.
He said
It was
not a priority on top of the agenda. That's what he said. You hear it? All right, let's move to City Council. Oh, yes. I was looking at Councilman Costello. Wait a minute. Councilman Costello for mayor.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I'm a little hoarse, but I've been on the phone all day today, so I'll try to make it brief and then answer any questions. But many people don't know who we are, particularly in your strong mayor form of government, so I want to tell you a little bit about my story. My wife and I came here over 40 years ago. And we came here, I got a job for the government, working in Galveston for the Army as a civilian. We came here with $500 and a Pinto with no air conditioning. And now you fast forward, I own a successful engineering company, which I just sold back to my partners, and I'm a city council member running for mayor. That's pretty an amazing story. And I know there are a lot of people here in Houston that have a very similar story. Talk a little bit about my firm. My firm was created in 1991. I co-founded that firm with 6 other people, and I helped it grow to what it is today. It's a successful engineering firm of over 130 people. What we're proud of is the fact that the firm has been recognized 5 times by the Houston Business Journal as the best place to work in the city of Houston. And that's based on an 85% blind employee survey that the management doesn't have any input in. So we're real proud of that. The other is that I'm one of your at-large council members, and I've been a council member now. This is my 6th year, and I'm turning it. And I've worked on a number of issues, but I'm also the budget chairman. And the mayor asked me to be her budget chair 5 years ago because of my fact that I am a businessman, and I'm a numbers guy. And so I think that's a unique thing. Some of the things I've worked on as far as a council member, I've worked on payday lending, I've worked on food deserts, and issues that affect the community at large. That's what an at-large council member does. And I also am available with my other colleagues, like Councilmember Bradford, to help district council members. What am I running on? I'm running on 3 specific issues. I'm running on public safety, because when you go around the community, as what was said earlier, there are a lot of our neighbors that don't feel safe. These underserved communities don't feel safe. And we need to get more cops on the street. We need to get more cops into the neighborhoods, is what we need to do. And I will continue to work for that. But as what was earlier said was some of the business model of their delivery is different. Less than 70% of the police officers' workforce is actually out on the street. Many of them are really doing clerical work. We need to change that business delivery model. The other issue is, yes, I'm in favor of Rebuild Houston, and I advocated for Rebuild Houston. I drive on the same roads you drive on. That infrastructure has been neglected for over 30 years, and we were able to pass an infrastructure system and funding program that allowed us to address the issues that we're addressing today, because all of the infrastructure is failing at the same time. Here are some of the successes. Over 375 projects have been completed over the last 4.5 years. We've lowered the city's debt relative to streets and drainage by $350 million. And we've almost tripled the investment annually on streets and drainage. And yes, can we do more? We can do better, we can. We can do a better job of informing the public what our project priorities are. We can do a better job of getting more work into the neighborhoods. That's what we need to do. And as your next mayor, I will make sure we do that, because I am an engineer and I am a problem solver. But if anyone that's up here for mayor does not address the one issue in the room, they call it the elephant in the room, I'm going to call it pensions. We need to address our pension systems. And I'll give you an idea. For every dollar that we pay in salary, we pay 37 cents to pensions. That's unaffordable. And it's projected to go to $1 for every dollar we pay in salary over the next 20 years if we don't do anything. We have to change that system. That business model is not sustainable. And prior to 2001, it was for every dollar, we were paying 15 cents, which is affordable. I'm not advocating getting rid of the defined benefit pension system. I'm advocating making slight modifications to it so that we can afford it. Because when we're able to do that, we'll get a structurally balanced budget. So what are you going to get when you get a city council member who's going to be your next mayor, Steve Costello? You are going to get a businessman who takes care of his employees. You're going to get an engineer who's a problem solver and knows how to deliver projects on time and in budget. But you're also going to get someone who's running for the right reason. It's time for me to give back to the community. And that's the only reason why I'm here. Because I've been blessed by the city of Houston for all these years, and it's time for me to give back to the community. So I'll end there, and I'm sorry for Morris. I'll answer any questions if anyone has a question they'd like to ask me. Yes, ma'am.
Arts?
Talk a little bit about the arts. We were all at a forum. The very first forum was the Arts Forum, and there's an issue of whether or not arts are being funded properly, and whether or not the city did the right thing by taking back some of the hot tax. Well, the city's attempt was to figure out a way to develop more money for our special civic events, and that's needed. And we need to see that business model work, whether it's going to work or not. The other issue is that arts is a $9 billion enterprise in the city, and we need to do a good job working with the arts community to convince the public that this needs more funding. And I will advocate for that as we move on as your mayor. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about the projects that have been going on. One of the things we've seen in the Trumpstown area is the use of management districts and curves the tax for the investment zones. Do you think that's a viable model going forward for the city to leverage to bring in more money for these projects? If we had more of these going on, would that free up money for, say, Angels and other projects?
The question is relative to TERS and whether or not that's a good business model moving forward. We're actually regulated by the state on the number of TERS that we can have based on the overall AV of the city. I'm in favor of TERS. I think they do work. The problem is that we have just over 20, and not all of them are working. And we should abandon the ones that aren't working and reallocate the resources elsewhere. We simply can't flip the switch and take over all the TERS because of the debt financing of the TERS. But in certain areas, it's good investment in certain parts of the community. Now remember, we do get 25% reimbursement back from the TERS for housing and community development. We get some more money reimbursed back to us for public safety in those tourist boundaries. We get some more money for the Economic Development Department to manage those tourists. So it's not as if they're using all of the funding resources. What we need to do is do a better job, transparency, so that the public knows exactly what they're doing. And so you hear that probably from some of the speakers. But thank you for that question.
Councilmember,
By the way, that was Councilmember David Robinson. I appreciate that question. I voted in support of HERO because I don't believe anyone should be discriminated against. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
All right, Councilman, we're going to run through at-large council races.
Controller.
Oh, is Adrian Garcia here? I don't think he's here yet.
Controller.
You want to take a controller first?
Yeah.
No.